Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
Wage theft is a growing problem in Minnesota. We look into what lawmakers can do to help. And the new Senate building wins important design awards, plus a look at an historic piano. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Lurkey. Last year, according to the Office of Governor Mark Dayton, over 39,000 Minnesotans experienced wage theft, totaling $11.9 million in lost wages. On Tuesday, the Senate Committee on Jobs and Economic Growth held an informational hearing on a bill that would prohibit wage theft. Here are some highlights.
The company's name was Crystal Care. They were one of the largest home care companies in the state. In 2012, me and nearly 600 employees went 45 days with no pay.
I was a Lakeville Motor Express employee for 20 years. I was the #1 road driver. I worked 14 hours a day, and now it's all gone. The company locked the doors on us with no warning just 3 days before Thanksgiving.
I was employed at Lakeville Motor Express for 17 years. I worked the last day that they locked down the place. That was on November the 19th. I spent my time to come there to move freight for them and do whatever they needed to be done. But they also stabbed me in the back.
Yo trabajaba por 17 años en una lavandería.
I worked for 17 years in a laundromat.
Y yo sufrí robo de salario.
I experienced wage theft there.
Hasta ahorita todavía me siguen debiendo y es difícil para mí.
Today, I'm still owed wages, and this has been a hardship for me.
It's pretty easy to get away with wage theft in Minnesota. In this case, this employer got months of free labor from hardworking, eager young men. He was, meanwhile, depositing money that he was getting from clients and never paid his employees a dime.
And I'm here today in opposition to this bill because it goes too far. As someone who does staffing and as a vice chair of the Staffing Association, our members employ roughly 60,000 people each week in the state of Minnesota. We are a bridge to long-term employment. Our concern with this bill is that it will prevent people from getting jobs.
Is Senate File 1329 a bill that should become law? Respectfully, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce thinks no, that there are too many flaws in this bill for it to become law.
It is our position that current law already provides remedies in the case of an employer being guilty of wage theft. And while this legislation seeks to address the bad actors, unfortunately impacts all actors and will result in significant unintended consequences.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss the bill that would increase civil and criminal penalties for employers who engage in wage theft is the bill's author, Senator Bobby Joe Champion. Welcome.
Thank you for having me this morning to talk about such an important topic.
How big of a problem is wage theft in Minnesota?
You know, wage theft is a big problem. So let me put it in context this way. Every day, 2.9 million people get up every day and leave for work. When you think in terms of the number of people that we have documented that has experienced some wage theft is over 39,000 people a year. Now that number could go up exponentially because there are people who just feel as if there's nothing that can be done, so they don't do anything. So we believe that it's a growing problem.
Currently, what recourse do workers have when they are victims of wage theft, which can be not being paid at all, not getting overtime, not getting minimum wage, coercion to work extra hours? What recourse do they have?
You know, right now they can call the Department of Labor and Industry, and they are limited, right? Because some of the things that we're trying to address, like for example, the department to have subpoena power so that they can get these companies to give certain information so that they can really take a look at whether there is a problem. Secondly, what do you do with that information, right? You know, how do we make sure that we're also still protecting people's due process rights? So even with a company who says, you know, if the Department of Labor and Industry is able to glean that information, if an employer says, well, hey, no, I still believe that I didn't do anything wrong, what is the process that they can go through expeditiously in order to make sure that their due process rights are still being protected, right? And so when you have that balance, I think that's important to make sure that people in Minnesota feel safe and feel like if they're working for a company with an expectation of being paid, that they are paid what they expect, right? And if not, there should be a remedy. So we want to deter those things from happening, wage theft.
So essentially, this legislation is laying out a process by which employees can contact someone, and there is a process that these claims can be looked at so that remedies are made. Is that kind of correct?
Absolutely, and not to mention, you probably did have an opportunity to hear the hearing yesterday where there's a cross-section of people who said, I did go to the Department of Labor and Industry, and they were not able to help me because there were no protections in law that could be helpful for me. In fact, there was a woman by the name of, I think her name is Elizabeth Neely, who came and testified on behalf of her son, who's a college student, who had worked for a company along with his friends, did great work, but guess what? They didn't get paid. In fact, she thought that he was the only person, because they were so persistent, to even get a small portion of the money that they were owed. But when you think in terms of the money that they didn't receive, which is over $20,000, she said, we came to the Department of Labor and Industry. They could not help me. So this legislation would help provide a mechanism for my son and others like him to get the outcomes or the remedies that they deserve when they work for a wage and they are not given the money that they were promised.
So is this really an enforcement issue? Because a lot of these things already are against the law, but they're not being enforced. People, businesses, employers are finding ways around these laws. So this is really just further ways to enforce law?
Enforce it, but clarify it. For an example, in our legislation, we define what wage theft is, right? We make it very clear. We also set up some parameters around due process. You and I talked about that. And in fact, we want to close the loophole, right? If individuals are taking advantage of workers every single day, we want to make sure that people get the money and the protections that they deserve. So it's not just enforcement, but it's enforcement along with a process, along with protections.
Now, one of the testifiers for the Minnesota Recruiting and Staffing Association talked about freelancers, contingent workers, independent contractors, consultants. They go by many names. She said that this kind of work is expected to grow to become as much as 40% of the future workforce. Does this proposal address that kind of work, which is exempt from many of the labor laws we're talking about?
Well, let me say right now, that is an area that we are talking a whole lot about it. How can we address that issue? Because that is a growing issue. And I said to you off camera is that there's never any single piece of legislation that can solve all problems of the world, but we need to make sure that we are mindful of the various challenges that different aspects of work presents, right? So I believe that it will be helpful and it will move us in the right direction to even help those workers so that individuals, if they're independent contractors, if they whatever name that you want to call them, if there is an expectation, if they are to be paid, then they should be paid. And I think that person's last name was Lathan, I think it was her last name, who testified yesterday. But the problem that she identified was one that we should all work towards solving, not running away from. And so some of my problems with the chamber or with the Retailers Association is not that they're not quality organizations, because I think that they're wonderful organizations, but I think sometimes they're so short-sighted. They can see the problem, but they can't see the solution. They say that there's a problem and that wage theft is bad, but they don't propose any viable pathway by which to say, we want to not just protect an employer, but we want to protect an employee. And we want to be partners in going forward, because all citizens are important to us, not just the business owner, but also the person who comes to staff that company.
You know, it's likely that many victims of wage theft are not aware of their rights, or they're afraid of reprisals. They're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of not having any money at all. What would you say to those people? How did they find a way to speak up?
You know, I think yesterday was a start. In fact, there was a young lady who was a Spanish-speaking person who had an interpreter who cried the majority of her testimony because she talked about her fear and how she needed to provide for her family, how speaking up created a situation that could be detrimental to her family. But she also understood the importance of sacrifice, to say that if I have to make the sacrifice today so that someone doesn't have to feel what I feel, go through what I I'm going through, then I'm willing to do that. And I would say to any person who's experiencing this, speak up. Put it on the record, as they say, so that we can acknowledge it and for it not to just be anecdotal and for us to put a face behind the name, because sometimes we hear these stories and legislators sometimes are really good with denying the obvious, right? Oh, no one's complaining to us. No one's saying anything to us. And that is supposed to perhaps lead people to believe that there's no problem and that others are just making it up. Yesterday was an opportunity for the committee that I serve on and others who got a chance to see it on television to see that there is a real problem and that we need to be responsible, we need to be responsive, and we need to make sure we prevent it from happening to any other person, whether it's a member of our family or our neighbor or someone we may never know. But we know that person has a family, we know that person has value, and so I just think it's a start. And so those people should speak up, call the Department of Labor Industry, call their legislators as well to say, hey, yes, this is a problem. And for there to be a cross-section of people to come forward with varied stories, I think speaks to the importance of this important piece of legislation.
Senator Champion, thank you very much.
And thank you for having me, and I appreciate you wearing purple as well. Let me just tell you that.
The Minnesota Senate building was a recent winner of a major design build award. It was presented to Mortenson Construction, the BWBR and Picard Chilton architecture firms, and the state of Minnesota.
The award for excellence, as well as the 2017 Project of the Year to Mortenson Construction for the Minnesota Senate building.
Well, the award is a fantastic recognition of the project and the design-build process, and the design-build was just critical for this process. We started with a tight timeline to begin with. This was an integral part of the Capitol restoration, with tenants moving out of the Capitol and needing a place to go. We had some delays, obviously, with the challenges to the project, and it was still delivered on time. So to win a design build award, which is one of the processes we use to build construction not only well, but to do it quickly, this is a fantastic award.
Design build is a different type of delivery model that really puts trust at the center of the relationship and the contractual relationship between the owner, the architect, and the contractor. It really shifts focus to teamwork and integrated team principles, much more so than contractual barriers that are in other types of delivery methods. And with design build, you can start procuring different bid packages and different scopes of work earlier. You can be building as you're continuing to design, and that was a key element to be able to deliver this project in a really, really short window. We delivered the project within 15 months of breaking ground and within about 20 months of starting design, which is incredible when you think about the scope of this project. This project was really a great team approach with the designers who are on our team, BWBR in St. Paul, with Picard Chilton actually on the East Coast, offering a lot of expertise, to the over 50 companies that worked on our project together as a team to put this together. We had over 375,000 worker hours on the project, and these things don't happen without a very, very good team-centered focus. And it was an amazing team approach. And what we're also proud of is that it was a Minnesota funded building, it was a Minnesota fabricated building, it was a Minnesota built building, where we utilized the people from Minnesota to build it. The state of Minnesota led this. They selected design build, and they selected a team that was integrated in nature, and they were all in that integrated principle. They were a great teammate of ours, they were a great customer. Very, very fair, very hard at times, and made sure that everybody towed the line. And at the end of the day, we all did, and we all worked together in a great way. And this is the outcome, which is very, very positive.
The important thing to remember, I think, is that this project is an integral part of the Capitol grand opening. We're going to be celebrating the grand opening of the restored Capitol this August 11th, 12th, and 13th. And the reality is that this is about the people of Minnesota being able to access their government for the next 100 years and to be able to do that efficiently. And so this project goes hand in hand with the integration into the Capitol restoration. It was an essential part of it. And so to be able to be recognized for this project in that regard, I think, is a really important part of Minnesota's history and a recognition of the work that Minnesotans do.
Housed within the new Senate building is an historic George Steck Baby Grand piano. And typically, when one finds a piano in a public space, it has a sign on it that says, "Do not touch." But not at the Minnesota Senate building, where all are invited to play this piano, originally donated to the Highway Department in 1958. Piecing together the history of this instrument through old Minnesota Highways newsletters offers a glimpse of life in the 1950s, including district news from around the state, blood drives, galas, pageants, promotions, and retirements. The piano was donated by the Highwayan Club, a social club for employees of the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Transportation. The instrument was chosen by Helen McCluskey, the longtime accompanist for the Highwayan Choraleers, and Vince Bovitz, Vice President of the club and Director of Public Information. In its heyday, the Highwayan Choraleers had as many as 50 members and even performed for the inauguration of Governor C. Elmer Anderson in 1951. The group continues to perform for holiday concerts and special events today. You'll find the piano tucked into a corner on the first floor of the Minnesota Senate building. Lawmakers, lobbyists, and the public are encouraged to sit and play, offering vital relief to the tensions that often surround the crafting of public policy.
It's amazing to have the opportunity to come and play on a grand piano. I just have a keyboard at my house. So in public in general, whenever I see a grand piano, I love to stop and play. And here at the legislature, because it's so hectic and crazy, if there are days or moments where I just think, I need a break, I need to go on a walk, I need to just disconnect from the pressure, I can come over here and I see the piano, and that actually happened just the other day. I wasn't necessarily planning to stop, but I thought, you know what, I don't get to do this all the time, and it's a perfect opportunity to just have a moment and forget about all of the deadlines and forget about all of the other things going on. And again, bonus that sometimes people are walking by and they get to kind of check out a little bit too and just say, oh, look there's something going on here that has nothing to do with deadlines and passing bills and making laws, and we can just all be connected on a very level playing field. Everyone loves music.
And so a new chapter begins for this George Steck Baby Grand, and the opportunity to share music with the community continues. According to a Minnesota Public Radio report, 90% of the shrimp consumed by Americans comes from abroad, and agribusinesses are considering ways to produce shrimp domestically. A bill that would provide incentives for shrimp farming in Minnesota is moving through the Senate, and the bill's author, Senator Bill Weber, now joins me in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
How did the idea of growing shrimp in Minnesota come across your radar?
Well, I was first invited to a meeting in Balaton, Minnesota by Ralco, the parent company of True Shrimp. And Ralco is a multi-generational, family-owned company, animal nutrition company in the area, in Balaton, Marshall area. And they had acquired the rights for this raising system of shrimp, and it had been developed by a professor in Texas. And they had built a test facility at their headquarters. And a couple of years ago, I had my first meeting there and had a tour and an explanation of what they were actually trying to do.
And what would your bill do to increase the likelihood that shrimp farming would begin to happen in Minnesota?
Well, there's actually a production incentive there designed to produce so many cents per pound for shrimp raised. And I think it's important to remember, too, that the production incentive is not something that is given to them up front in hopes that they'll develop the shrimp industry. They actually have to be up, running, and have produced the shrimp before they would get any of that production incentive from the state of Minnesota. In addition, I have a couple of other bills sitting in tax committee that deal with some sales tax exemptions for the specialized equipment that is necessary, as well as changing the definitions so that the facility at the harbor, for example, where they would be raised, is actually qualified under aquaculture and thus agriculture for tax treatment.
Aquaculture would be sort of a new area in Minnesota?
No, there's actually existing legislation and definitions for aquaculture in Minnesota law already.
I guess I just haven't heard about it. Is this bill sort of geared towards your district, or could anyone, say, begin producing shrimp and take advantage of these tax incentives?
Anyone could take advantage of that. Now, the system obviously is fairly large. And actually the plans for True Shrimp itself really is designed not to just simply be southwest Minnesota, but to encompass a much larger area in Minnesota eventually, if the project continues to move forward and to be successful.
Now, I understand, in addition to the fact that the meat would then be produced domestically, I understand there's also some medical benefits possible?
That is correct. During the growing process, a shrimp is going to molt or shed its shell several times. Within the shell is a chemical called chitin, and from that they produce chitin, which has a medical application, particularly in stopping bleeding and also aiding in bone repair and healing. And so I think that that production has been limited with so many shrimp gathered out of the wild just due to a contamination issue. And in this scenario, the shrimp will be raised obviously under controlled circumstances, and they will be able to harvest those shells and use it in that process.
A University of Minnesota impact study found that the industry would have a $48 million impact in southwestern Minnesota. What kinds of jobs will be created?
Well, you're going to have a variety of jobs there. Initially, the construction itself of a harbor is going to be 9 acres under roof. And so you're looking at a $50 to $60 million investment just in terms of construction. But once the harbor is actually operating, you're looking at a staff of approximately 60 people. And so you'll have scientists, you'll have technicians, you'll have people that are doing more menial tasks of caring for the shrimp and that. But you also have a process whereby whereas you're bringing the water in, it has to be salt water, so there's a salinization process that goes on. And there's also a recapture process whereby they aren't changing the total volume of that water every day or every week or anything. They're actually recapturing much of that water and reusing it within the process. And so they'll be able to utilize a lot of different people in that scenario. Also, it's important to remember that they really are designing this to be a Minnesota business. In other words, this will be a first attempt to actually, and they've already been researching and have the process down, they will be dealing with a Minnesota company as far as the feed supply, using corn, wheat, soybeans in order to produce the food for the shrimp. They are working with another Minnesota company to develop the specialized harvesting equipment and processing equipment that's needed. Right now, with many of the shrimp that are grown in open ponds in Southeast Asia and what have you, most of that work is all hand done, a lot of it by child labor. And actually, in order to allow for easier working with the shrimp to, separate the heads and do all this and that, they actually wind up leaving them lay out in the sun for a while so they age, which there's another word for that, but we won't get into that, and to make it easier to actually deal with the process. And so they're working with a Minnesota company to actually deal with the mechanical machine to actually do the processing of the shrimp.
Have they said how much they think this shrimp will cost? Will it be more expensive than the foreign produced shrimp?
No, they believe that they'll be right within the realms of the market or even a little under what that market is.
Well, Senator Weber, this is fascinating, and I want to thank you for coming today.
Well, certainly glad to be here. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. They're looking at, I think, a unique business model, and it isn't just designed for them as a company, but it is really a design for communities to get involved and to have local investors and to actually keep this investment within Minnesota communities. And I think I appreciate their efforts because I know that they are being sought after by neighboring states and actually other countries to bring that process over there and take it out of here entirely.
Well, we'll hope to keep it in Minnesota. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Very good. Thank you very much.
This week in the Capitol Rotunda, hundreds of citizens from around the state rallied and heard speeches calling for continued investments in clean water.
We got lobbyists and others representing special interest groups who are saying, well, take away the environmental protections, roll back or delay the buffer legislation, put hands of the polluters in charge of what's going to happen here in Minnesota, our waters, our air, our earth, and that's why all of you being here is what's so important.
Ag runoff is a leading contributor to our state's polluted water. Farming is part of the problem, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, it's going to have to be integral to the solution if we ever want clean water.
Minnesota, home to 10,000 lakes, 100,000 rivers and streams, and currently a pretty healthy groundwater system thus far. But we are sitting on a fault line of sorts. Without a broad awakening that as our population and as our economics grow, so does the use of water, and that the reliance on a single resource is not sustainable.
This is a place where water will be protected here. We have a fifth of the world's water. We live in a place the Creator gave us a beautiful land upon which to live. We can still drink the water from a lake in the northern part of this state. We can still get sugar from a tree and eat our sacred wild rice. This is the only place in the world that it grows. So it's a very great set of gifts given to us by the Creator, and it is the covenant that this generation has is to protect all that was given to us.
And Tuesday was Zoo Day at the Capitol. Lawmakers and visitors had a chance to see and touch a variety of engaging creatures.
Well, one aspect of the zoo is that it's an economic engine for our state. It contributes about $146 million to our economy through visitors, 1.3 million visitors every year. And, I think, though, of a greater importance is just the quality of life that it provides for our citizens, especially children. Who doesn't love coming to the zoo?
It's a world-class zoo right now, 1.3 million visitors, one of the biggest environmental education facilities in the state of Minnesota. But I think we can do a lot more. One of my first things is access and diversity and inclusion. The zoo can reach all counties, and we can get out and reach more kids and make the zoo more accessible. So we're starting a program called Zoo Unlimited, or Free to Explore. We're going to be really focusing on the families and the underserved communities that need special access and special help getting to the zoo. And if they can't get to us, we're going to bring the zoo to them. Kind of like what we're doing here today.
Me, that a friend of mine had a pet tree.
Really? Oh my God.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Lurkey, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.